you're kind of the main person. You walk in, you sit down, and they hand you this textbook that passes for a wine list. You're like having a stroke. You don't know what to do. This thing's like, I don't know, 200 pages. There's 1,000 wines in there. Everything's overpriced. And now you're like in full panic mode. Your arms are starting to sweat. You know, you look like you're about to pass out. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Wine by the Bay TV. I'm your host, George Bachara. I did a survey. I went out in the street, met some folks, met some subscribers to find out like what their number one wine worry is. Is it picking the right wine? Is it planning a trip to, say, Napa Valley? Is it bringing the right wine to a party? Is it pairing? What is it that makes you stress out when you think about wine? And the number one answer was
picking out wine from the wine list.
Definitely reading the wine list.
So we're going to talk today about your number one wine worry, and that is how to read and deal with a wine list when you go out to dinner. So you and I, we know how it goes. So we're going to do this together. You, me, let's get started. So my first tip is ask for help. Okay, advice from a sommelier, advice from one of the managers, advice from a wine captain, or even a knowledgeable server is going to be invaluable. But the trick is you got to actually ask for it. If you walk in there and you act like you know everything about everything and you're freaking out because you don't know anything, well, you're going to lose. So my second tip number 2, is describe what you like. Learn how to use a couple of descriptors to decipher and communicate with the waitstaff or the sommelier or whatever, what kind of characteristics of wine you like. Do you like it lighter? Do you like it darker? Do you like more intense flavors? Do you like something that's drier, something that's sweeter? Okay, all of these descriptors, while they're not overly sophisticated or you're not getting into like complex secondary and tertiary flavor profiles, if you have a couple of descriptive words, you can help the person that's serving you to kind of interpret the list through your eyes and get at least close to something that you might enjoy. So when you're drinking wine at home or when you're drinking wine with friends and you like, oh, this is a really great bottle, think about the kinds of things that you drink often. You know, use words like big and bold, dark color, subtle and elegant. Words like that will help guide the server or the wine captain or the sommelier to things that you will like on their wine. Don't be afraid to talk about price, okay? Everybody's price sensitive at some point. Now, some people's price sensitivity is $2,000 a bottle. Other people's price sensitivity is $50 a bottle, okay? There's no right or wrong answer. But if you go in there like, oh, you know, I have unlimited money and you're willing to spend $80 on a bottle of wine, you know, you're gonna get recommendations that you can't come through with, okay? So you have to know what your budget is. And then from there, be honest with your server or your sommelier or whatever, to kind of come into a price point. Maybe that means that, you know, you're in a different region than maybe you thought you started in. So like regions like Bordeaux can become very expensive, okay, based on the fact that, or Napa Valley for that matter, based on the fact that, you know, the reputation of the area is so high and the prices have come up so much that maybe that's out of your range. And that's when your sommelier, your server comes in and says, wait a minute, you know, have you tried something from Spain? Have you tried something from Chile? That's a little bit more economical and more value driven. It'll give you the same kind of experience for about half the price. So that's important. You have to be honest about price. If you're enjoying this video, by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. If you have any additional tips about ordering wine, things that work for you, I'd love to see it in the comment section. We'll share it around with the community. Also, share this video with your friends, especially if someone has like a big date coming up or they're meeting the parents for the first time, that kind of thing. You'll give them a hand, helps the channel as well. And like I say, like and subscribe. Okay, so we live in an internet world. So my next tip is gonna be to use the internet. Do your research, use Google, apps like wine.com, Vivino. There's also a great website called K&L Wine Merchants, or a local wine merchant that maybe you have at home that has a web presence so you know the wines. They oftentimes post scores. So you can look up specific bottles of wine. Okay, you can do this either ahead of time. A lot of times, restaurants these days are posting dynamic lists. So what they'll do is they'll post their wine list online, and in some cases, it's even real time availability. So you can kind of pre-select your wine, do a little bit of research on Google or whatever, and find a bottle that you like. Maybe pick 2 or 3 so that if when you get to the restaurant, if they're out, you can go ahead and go to your second choice or maybe your third choice, depending on what their availability is in terms of how much stock they have. When you're in the restaurant, you can use these tools, especially Google, to find specific bottles. Now, if you can't find the bottle that you're looking for, maybe it's the wrong year or whatever, you can also Google the scores for each region for each year. So let's say you're looking at a 2016 Napa Cabernet, and you don't know anything about the producer in terms of like quality for that specific bottle. You can look up and say, okay, Napa Valley 2016 got, say, a 96-point score. So for that year, the vintage generally was really, really good. So you can make a determination maybe between 2 bottles, one's a 15, one's a 16, one's a 16, one's a 17, and maybe 2 different producers that you've heard of before, so there's some level of quality, but you're not really sure between the 2 bottles. You can use that as well as a little tool to help you decide, okay, I'll take the 16 rather than the 14 or the 17. So that's another way. If you can't find a specific bottle on the internet or on one of those apps like the Vino or something, you can go ahead and find the scores for that particular year, the vintage. And that way that'll give you a guide. So you'll get something that may not be the best choice, but it'll be a really good choice. So it'll help you to make an informed decision. I'm gonna leave links in the description box to some of my favorite websites and apps that can help you to find all these different scores and ratings, either for bottles specifically or for different wine regions. So that way you have a chance to kind of find them really, really quickly, save them in your phone. And then when you're out to dinner, you can just attack them and no one will even know you're doing it, okay? The other thing you can do if you're absent of like knowing the producers and knowing the years or whatever, or your phone isn't working because you have bad internet service, you can go ahead and do common pairings, okay? So if you're having a steak tonight, and especially like a marbled steak like a ribeye, you can do California Cab, you can do Bordeaux, you can do a Petite Syrah if you want, something that's a little bit heavier and richer with nice tannins that'll cut through the fat. But if you're, say, having fish, like a white fish, say a cod or a halibut or something, you might want to go with a Chardonnay, or maybe like a Fumé Blanc, and a little bit lighter, like a white wine. If you're doing salmon, maybe a Pinot. If you use the common food pairings, you can kind of like adjust for the quality of the bottle by making it kind of sing with its buddy. So in other words, like if you're in a choir, right, you don't want to have people singing different keys. So when you pair food and wine properly, they're singing the same song on the same key from the same hymn book. So even if the voice quality isn't great, together it's greater than the sum of the parts. So another great option is to bring your own bottle of wine. Now, having worked in the restaurant business, I used to hate this nonsense, okay? Because people would come in and, subvert the wine list. I've got a $300 bottle that I want somebody to buy, and they're bringing in their own wine. It's really good, and we're only charging corkage. So obviously the tip goes down for the server. From a service perspective, I don't like that so much. However, for you as the person consuming the wine, this has a lot of advantages. Now, typically, bear in mind, there is usually a corkage fee, anywhere from $15 up to as high as $50. And that'll change based on how fancy the restaurant is, how upscale it is, and how aggressive their wine program is. So, the more you're paying for dinner, typically the more you're paying for a corkage fee. This can be a valuable tool, okay? Especially if you have a few favorite bottles. It's a high stakes game of poker. You're taking this girl out or this guy out that you're really trying to impress, or you're taking your boss to dinner or something like that, or maybe a client, and you can't miss on the main bottle of wine. So you can bring your own, pay the corkage fee. This way you know the bottle, you know what it tastes like, it's a quality bottle. Chances are if you have good wine at home, it's stored properly because you know what you're doing as far as that goes, and that way it takes the guesswork out of a textbook thick list. You can maybe get a first course wine or a cocktail or a sparkling wine from the restaurant that you buy. That way, you don't feel so bad about like subverting their business and keeping them honest, keeping yourself honest, I should say, and then come in for the kill with a really great bottle, something that that's going to score like a 100-point score with your guests at the table. Okay, and this is my final tip, okay? Don't let pricing be your guide. I mean, to some degree, I know I just said that, you should have a price conversation, but what I mean is don't automatically go to the most expensive bottle on the menu, okay? Even if you can afford it, because sometimes those, high 3-figure, 4-figure wines it's just a scarcity issue, and if you're with a group of people that like wine but don't really know like what's what, or even if that's you're going on taste, you're paying for prestige that nobody's impressed by. Okay, so you're better off to just kind of like go with sometimes a more value-driven wine. And that means, as we spoke about earlier, you might have to go to a different region than your original plan was. So let's say you were thinking Barolo, and all the Barolos are $300 to $500, and your price point is $125 to $150. Okay, if they have a Spanish section, okay, if you're going into Spain, you're gonna find really, really good Rioja for say $150 that will probably rival that $300 to $400 bottle of Barolo. Okay, it may not be exactly as good, but you're in the same ballpark. You just say 50%, maybe 60%, maybe 70%. Look for regions, like I said, Spain. Look for Chile. Look for South Africa. Look for Germany if you're looking for white wines, especially. These regions make some great wines. Perfect example. This is a wine you probably never heard of, Cap Classique. Okay, Cap Classique is a traditional method champagne, sparkling wine, made in the champagne method, the method champenoise, so the same way they make champagne, except it's made in South Africa. The flavor profile and the complexity rivals some $200 champagnes, $300 champagne sometimes, and sometimes you're paying $50 and less. So that's a perfect example of maybe if you get to know some of these different regions, the road less traveled can yield some really great wines for you at very, very, very reasonable prices and help you to navigate a list that might only have 2 or 3 bottles from these lesser known regions, but they're really quality stuff. So as you're going out into the world, don't be afraid to experiment. Go into these restaurants with confidence. Use the tips I just gave you to take the pressure off, bring that temperature down, bring the blood pressure down, and let you enjoy the dinner or lunch or whatever you're doing and the people that you're doing it with. So use these tips that we talked about. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon. Watch the next video. It's coming up on either one of these sides. I don't know where I'm putting it this time. Wine by the Bay TV. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time.